Hello and welcome to Politics Today. I'm Farooq Batafi. Usually, the brief of this program is to discuss politics. We try to report and bring to you as much discussion on politics as possible. But there are times when journalist himself becomes a news. And sadly, today is one of the, today's discussion is one that is going to focus on that matter, because recently we saw Ahmed Noorani, a journalist, being attacked in Islamabad, and there are reports of journalists coming under attack in other parts of the country as well. So today we are going to talk about the quality of media freedom in Pakistan, and we are going to talk about the rights of journalists as well. Remember that when Hamid Mir, a senior anchor and journalist, was attacked, at that time there was a lot of talk of improving the quality of laws that would protect journalists. But unfortunately, whenever such incident passes away and it is distant in memories, usually what happens is it is totally lost to impunity. Today we are going to talk about these matters and try to understand what is going on at this moment, because the government apparently is trying to make a law as well to ensure the physical safety and as well as the social safety of the journalists. But we have heard talk of such laws in the past as well. What is going to become, we will discuss in this program. In order to help us understand this matter, we are joined by Javed Siddique Saab, a senior journalist and editor, a columnist, and also talk show host. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Next to him is Zahid Gishkori, an investigative journalist, a regular on this show, and also somebody who belongs to the same group as Ahmed Noorani. I'm talking about Media Group. Thank you very much for being part of the program as well. And then we have with us Asad Beg, a digital and media rights activist. Thank you very much, Asad, for being part of the program as well. Javed Siddique Saab, I have to start with you. Where does media freedom end and something else starts? Because before coming to this program, we were discussing agenda-driven journalism as well. But the problem is, whatever agenda there might be, is it right to attack or harass a journalist?
I think it's very condemnable if a journalist is attacked purely on the basis of his journalistic activity, purely on the basis of the reports that he's filing in a newspaper or on a TV channel. That's condemnable. But in Pakistan's context, I would say that if we go back into history, the hard-earned freedom, whatever measure of freedom we are enjoying at this time, I believe that we have struggled a lot, Pakistani journalists, specifically the print media journalists. When back in the youth days, the Press and Publication Ordinance was enforced in Pakistan, which was known as draconian law.
Right.
And the newspapers was closed down, journalists were arrested, imprisoned, and in other eras, for instance, in Bhutto's eras, he was an elected prime minister, but some of the newspapers who were criticizing Mr. Bhutto and his policies, even they were closed,
Right.
and some of their owners were punished.
Right.
And General Zia comes and he started flogging journalists in
Right.
public. So, I mean, we have passed through all these hard times.
Right.
And when in 1989, the new Press and Publication Order or Ordinance, whatever law, it replaced the Press and Publication Ordinance. A measure of freedom was being exercised by the journalists from 89 to this date. And now we are talking about freedom enjoyed by press and all governments.
But sir, whenever we talk about these matters, you use this term hard-earned, freedom. The problem is, has that freedom really been earned? Because on one side, you see people at liberty to say whatever they want to, especially when it comes to elected, governments. But when it comes to the circles within circles, usually it is seen that people don't have that kind of freedom. For example, one circle is the militant organizations that
That's
keep
true.
on attacking people just because you cannot portray them as heroes.
Yeah, that's true. I think some international organization has declared Pakistan as the most dangerous country for the journalists.
Okay.
And
More than Iraq and Afghanistan?
rightly so, I think, because as you have said that there are some groups, some circles,
Right.
some sections of society which are intolerant to the freedom of expression.
Right.
And journalists come under attack by these groups, by these circles, by these institutions.
Okay.
And
So let me go to Zaid Gishkori. Zaid Gishkori, I'm a bit keen to learn what is going to happen now in Ahmed Noorani's case, because I understand there is an investigation going on. But in the past, whenever we saw similar kind of investigation that was started, and remember, Ahmed Noorani was sort of lucky that he survived the attack, and we should be glad. But in the past, we have seen journalists who were not even that lucky, and investigation didn't reach anywhere.
Thank
For
you.
example, Salim Shahzad's case.
Yes, thank you, Farooq, for the opportunity to speak on this issue. This is very important issue. And by the way, I'm not optimistic about this case even, because there are certain reasons, and let me to cite many examples. Ahmed Noorani is very lucky because I was over there. He stabbed and seriously injured, and right now he's stable. And I'm sure that now investigation will go on, but we are really surprised that Islamabad is a safe city,
Right.
and even the captured images captured by camera are not clear that the attackers are not being identified.
Yeah, and there's something ironic about these cameras. Whenever you need a record, usually they turn up foggy, or they are not equipped to take the right kind of picture. So what does it say about the overall safety of anybody in that city?
You're right. This is a capital. There is a question, a serious question
Yeah,
being
but we are
asked
not-
by anybody.
I hope we are not implying that only people living in capital should be safe or secure. There are other parts of the country, they should be secure there as well.
Yes, the important reason is that there was a serious attack on Hamid Mir. Investigation went on and went on. Supreme Court of Pakistan has been hearing this case. We have yet to know about the report, what exactly it
But I
said.
think that report came out in which the Supreme Court exonerated ISI.
Yeah,
You know that they were not responsible for that.
So far I know that it was officially not released. It was leaked.
Okay.
Okay.
So that is another very interesting phenomenon in Pakistan. In Pakistan and
Leakage.
the US, where
News
things keep
leaks.
on leaking. But regarding the intelligence agency that you were mentioning, the humble submission is that we don't have that kind of evidence to implicate anybody, because one channel tried to do it. And we saw what happened later on.
And media polarized, and it
Yeah, media
created
polarized,
really-
and maybe it wasn't the right call to make to accuse anybody without any investigation. Let me bring in Asad Beg regarding media freedoms and rights of journalists. Why is it that we always seem busy in making more laws, but we don't see that kind of laws already present that protect us all?
I think that's an excellent question. Thank you so much for asking it. Let me just say that what bothers me more, what sort of concerns me more as a media rights advocate and a person who keeps talking about it, is the lack of investigation, or impunity as we call it, more so than the attack itself. Because attack is nothing out of the ordinary. Journalists keep getting attacked in various countries. The point I'm trying to make here is not to sort of let down or demean the job of the journalist, who's basically making accountable a lot of government institutions as well. The problem I'm pointing at is impunity, and that is the basic reason which encourages the perpetrators to strike again. Because here are some figures for you, by the way.
Asad,
So-
sorry to cut you, but
Yeah.
here's the humble submission. I'm glad that you're mentioning or you're bringing up the issue of impunity. But in Pakistan, or a country like Pakistan, we have two big enemies. One is numbers that reduce the impact, true impact of a loss. The second one is words or terms that somehow restrict the understanding of the issue. Impunity is an excellent word, but the problem is you're not the first media activist who's talking about impunity. Everybody talks about impunity, but I don't see any serious work being done.
I'm just connecting it to the point that we're trying to make on the law, which is the government is working on. That's a very important point, Farrukh. I think we should talk about. Just 1 minute. So I think according to our data, 80 journalists have been attacked right now. These were all deadly attacks, by the way. Only I think 4 of them or 5 of them survived. 3 out of 80 cases, 3 cases, are the cases where we've seen convictions happening. So that clearly gives you a rate of impunity right there.
Okay.
Now you're talking about a very important point, the laws. Let me be very clear when I say that we do not need to duplicate the laws, existing laws, in order to give protection or to end impunity.
Right.
Here's the point. The law that the government is bringing in, I'm not sure if everybody here has a chance to sort of read it, but if you read it, nowhere in the law you'll find out anything about the impunity, about the prosecution, about the investigation, about the protection, or anything related to that. The law only talks about insurances, which is very important, but does not really say insurances. Yes.
Okay, you're talking about social security now.
Exactly. So that's what the law is about. Whereas it says that the law is about protection and the welfare of journalists, it's really not. The law aims to create a body which essentially comprises of the unions, the representative of the unions and civil society leaders and the government representatives. The only function of that body is to see how much money to give to a family of a person who is killed.
Okay.
That's the function of the main function of that
And
body.
while this is the state of the new law that is coming in, no law exists
Exactly.
to protect the journalists from this kind of attack or even impunity. Is this what you're saying at this moment?
That's exactly what I'm saying. What we have been advocating for is a law or a kind of legislation or any piece of policy for that matter, which improves the process of investigation, which takes it from all the bureaucratic layers of Interior Ministry and the police and whatnot, and takes it away from all these political pressures into a certainly free environment where there can be independent investigations possible in these cases. It's too much to ask, I know, but that's the only way we can. Let me quote an example from Mexico. What they've done there is they've made an office of special prosecutor.
Yeah.
Now they're completely failing at it. The whole mechanism is literally, it's collapsing right now, because prosecution is not the problem. Okay. Once you have the investigation sorted, you can get any good lawyer to prosecute on the basis of that investigation.
Right.
If you only have prosecutors who don't have access or jurisdiction to the investigation itself, to the crime scene itself, how are you going to make enough evidence to implicate whoever that you want to implicate?
Right. That is a big question, and we should be talking about that. But Javed Siddique sir, I'm glad that you brought up Pakistan's history, media rights and media activism history as well, and suffering of media. But I want to ask you something personal. You have been in journalism for decades, and I'm sure that you must have broken many stories, and you must have stepped on the wrong side of the powers that be. Do tell us, how protected or defended do you consider yourself when you go for something of that sort?
I don't consider myself protected at all.
Okay. Vulnerable?
Vulnerable, yes.
Okay.
But when you are filing stories, if you're doing investigative journalism, and you are exposing the corruption and misdeeds and misgovernance or anything that is against the interest of the society, of the country, that also makes you vulnerable, because certain people are hit, certain groups or certain sections of society or certain individuals, very powerful individuals, they are hit by that, they are affected, and they might retaliate.
Okay.
So, I have been, facing these kind of situations. Many of my colleagues also suffered these kind of consequences when they filed stories exposing people's misdeeds or doing damage to the national exchequer or indulging in corruption where the loot and plunder went on for a long period of time, which damaged Pakistan, and all kinds of stories. They make you very vulnerable because you don't have any laws which protect you or which safeguard your life, your property, or your other interests. So that needs to be taken care of. But at the same time, I would remind my colleagues that the Constitution clearly says that there are certain parameters under which and within which the press has to function.
Okay.
For instance, the freedom of expression that is given under Article 19 is subject to certain conditions of law.
Like
And
what?
The two institutions which, to my mind, are given protection or are there, and the
Are
journalists
you talking about Pembra law, or are you talking
I'm
about
talking of the Constitution of
Okay,
Pakistan.
okay.
Two important institutions of the state, they are given a kind of protection, and the journalists are cautioned that they have to exercise caution
One
here.
is
One is
judiciary.
the judiciary and the armed forces. If you
Okay,
try,
army is not supposed to be, in usual sense, it is not supposed to be an institution of the state. There are three main pillars of state, right?
no, but it is an institution.
Okay,
It's,
so
which is
Constitution actually
related-
makes
which is
it at
related
par
to
with
the-
judiciary.
With the security of Pakistan. So the armed forces and the judiciary are not to be ridiculed.
Okay,
That's very important.
Right.
And not to be brought into disrepute. This is very clearly written in the Constitution.
even
So I
if they
think-
are wrong in certain
no,
cases?
you may criticize them. I mean, if they are doing something against the interest of Pakistan, or for instance, if they are doing damage to the security of the country, you should be writing about it. You should be pointing it out. But generally, I'm telling you that the press freedom doesn't mean it is free for all.
Right, sir.
It's
But that
is
point is
subject
made.
to-
That,
yeah.
that point is made. But the problem is, in recent cases, whenever we have seen a journalist being accused of crossing a line, a red line of sorts, they end up being attacked by, people who are wearing civilian clothes in very dubious
Unidentified.
circumstances.
Unidentified.
Unidentified
Yes.
people.
That
So why
is-
not actually bring them in through the
Of course.
Constitution or through the courts?
Right, okay. And the people who attack, the unidentified people who attack in the thick of the night, or the people who are attacked during the daytime, daylight. Anybody who is attacked, any journalist who is attacked or persecuted, I think investigation should be carried out, and it must be taken to its logical end. And people who are responsible for that must be brought to a court of law, and they must be penalized and and punished. Otherwise, this whole exercise
Will continue,
Yeah,
and it will be an exercise in
it's
futility.
futile. Yes.
Do we have, Zaid Gishkori, do we have enough safeguards, at least on paper, to ensure that journalists are protected and the people who are attacked are, brought to justice?
Farooq, look, during the last 20 years in Pakistan, 137 journalists killed, 270 plus injured seriously. Right now, only 4 cases are being pleaded in different courts in the country. Not a single journalist was served justice during this period.
Can you identify one or two cases, because
Yes,
I'm really
very
curious.
much, very much cases. I will just quote one example. If you remember, in Karachi, GeoTV correspondent was gunned down, and the Karachi was
Yeah,
the
that is
city.
a big example. That's true.
At that time, nobody had courage to write against MQM, no matter it's the fact or not. We are like catch-22 situation. Please let me to speak my heart, because I'm a
I'm not
journalist.
stopping you. Hey, come on, go
I'm
ahead.
a journalist that if I am filing something against militant claim and militant compel me to give their point of view on TV screen. Otherwise, on the very next day, you be not here. And the other side, the government and the military, and we also, after National Action Plan, went to an agreement, and I agree to that point. It was very right for the state safety and peace that we are not supposed to publish their stuff, their point of view, and media had somehow implemented it. That's a good omen. But right now in Balochistan, look at this, a very serious situation. Media is not discussing it. Media persons are under attack. Today, one media house attacked in Quetta.
Can we identify who is attacking them?
this is a very important question. Everybody is seeking this answer, seeking
Because,
answer of
you know,
this.
the problem is there is cost of
I can
fighting
identify,
for
let me
democracy in the
identify.
society as well. Hang on, hang on. When you talk about Pakistan, of course, we are trying to become a democracy and a better democracy. But since we are fighting with those who challenge democracy, especially when it comes to religious militancy,
Yeah.
those groups continuously challenge your democracy, and there maybe democracy is sort of suspended in some aspects. That at least you cannot report anything with the exception of the official version. Because 10 years, 11 years ago, I remember in the private sector when I was hosting programs there, we were actually forbidden to call our own soldiers martyrs. And we were forbidden to portray the terrorists who were attacking them as negative elements by the media groups themselves, because they thought that they are going to be attacked. I was one of the earliest birds who started actually calling our soldiers martyrs, because I thought that whatever the cost is, we have to bear it. The problem at this moment is in Balochistan, we have some areas of troubled nature, and then Waziristan also. But when you're talking about Islamabad, when you're talking about Karachi, when you're talking about Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, does it worry you?
It worry me because it worry me a lot. I am a self-censored person as a journalist.
You censor yourself.
Yes, I know the red line, because if I am writing against something very harsh and it's interestingly based on fact, but I know that on the very next day I be facing such sort of fate as my colleague Ahmed Noorani faced the day before yesterday. So there
No,
was a
hang on,
situation, not
did you
only the
receive any
political party,
threats?
listen, not
No,
only
no.
the political party once threatened journalists, but also proscribed organization, more than 63 organizations in
Yeah,
Pakistan.
that was
and then the
that was what I was
Taliban,
talking about.
and then Baloch militant. Just let me to say it. I was over there in Dera Bukti for coverage. I wrote a couple of pieces for Express Tribune in 2014 that I was just threatened that please do publish our point of view as well. While I am sitting in Islamabad, I feel that I am safe. But a journalist who is reporting from Dera Bukti or reporting from North Waziristan, can you imagine his story is based on fact? No, he can't.
Because
he can't
that
that. And unfortunately, some political parties even does not have the courage to show some sort of sympathies for journalists. Even invisible forces attacked many journalists. Nobody knows that.
Yeah, but I don't know whether it was about invisible forces or not, but I remember when Hamid Mir was attacked and the entire cabinet ended up going there to ask about his well-being. At that time, so many media channels actually started criticizing the government because they thought
Yes,
that
and,
they are siding with the devil rather than the state
And
institution.
luckily, at that time, I was at Department of State.
Okay.
And press briefing was going on, and one of my friends sent me a text message that your colleague has been attacked in Karachi.
Yeah.
And we posed a couple of questions. Mary Harif was the deputy spokesperson at that time. That they said that we are very sorry that Pakistan at number 140 out of 180 countries in press freedom. But yes, it's true. At some extent, our journalists need sort of training as well.
Okay, we are
When
going
we
to
talk
talk
about press freedom, it means responsibility.
Yeah, but regarding this training, I'm a bit worried because every time we are told that we have to improve the laws or we have to actually train the journalists, we have to do this or that. We are talking, and you were highlighting some existential threats that are not going to go away. Asad Beg, this is the problem. When I'm in a conflict zone, or even a troubled area, or even linked to something of that sort, sitting in a peaceful area like Islamabad, laws are not going to save me. When it comes to training, it is not going to save me. What kind of alternative then should we seek that every journalist is protected? We are in a number that cannot be protected by the special forces all the time. We have to go in the field. What exactly can be done then?
And look, Farooq, I have to say here that the protection of the citizens of Pakistan is on the state of Pakistan.
Yeah.
I mean, if we are to looking for individual measures, then I might as well pick up an AK-47 and put up a guard outside my house and just feel safe about it. But that's, you see, the point. It's not my responsibility to provide safety to myself. It's a state's responsibility. It's not. It's simply not. You see, it's state's responsibility because the right of life that is given by the state. So the state's responsibility to provide. So here two or three important things that we need to look at. One, the right to life. B, if God forbid something happens to me, then the right to justice, to seek justice, the right to to bring the perpetrators in that spot where they can be punished for their deeds. Right. So that's the most important thing. My question to you now this. We all saw and read the Hamid Mir Commission report, which was leaked and which was very unfortunate. Should have been made public. I mean, leaking it was anyway. The report very clearly said that the data, the geofencing data, was not provided to whom? To the Chief Justice of the then Chief Justice of Pakistan, who was leading the commission. So if this is the reality of the justice in Pakistan, then I'm very sorry to say that it's only a it's a dream reality that we are living in.
Are you talking about the quality of justice, or are you talking about quality of governance in the country? Because
I'm talking about everything, actually.
Some organization might not have done their work properly.
I completely agree with you, but that's equally condemnable. You see, if the data is not available for whatever reasons there is, right? That points towards a serious lack of I would say ability here. Then, right? And so then, are we given a fake?
No, but what you're doing, Asad, at this moment is you're highlighting the problems. Now I'm trying to seek answers because I need some kind of solution. Remember, all of us, whosoever is a journalist, has been threatened in the past. I might be carrying a dozen or so threats even at this moment in my mobile, sent to me this very day. But the problem is when it comes to a reporter who's exposed in the field, it becomes very difficult to safeguard him. What are the technical measures that can be taken?
Yes. So, to just simply answer your question, there is not one simple solution to it, right? Even the law, right? Even when we say we need special policy, special law, that's not like a band-aid solution we put on the situation and everything is going to be hunky and dory. It's not like that. There is a sort of kind of a multi-pronged approach which needs to be adopted by the state, by the civil society organizations such as ours, and by the media itself, right?
And so by media, you mean media owners?
I mean the media industry, the media houses, the journalists themselves rather, right? Okay. So it includes the journalists, the unions and the community itself. So the whole fraternity, so to speak. And these responsibilities were very clearly drawn in the UN Action Plan, which was a 2012 initiative of UNESCO. Right. And it was a very comprehensive document, I would say. Still, it remains to be one of the very comprehensive documents that we have available to us. We tried to, based on some indicators, we tried to assess the performance of various institutions on that. And to be very honest with you, it was not a very good situation. Not just on the side of the state, let me also say that, but also on the sides of the media houses and the civil society organizations. Because training, to be honest with you, I think that the Pakistani journalists have literally got their share of trainings, but trainings are extremely important.
Okay. Training is important, but before that, since you mentioned civil society's role, my concern is that when you look at the watchdog, responsibility, you can see more than a dozen when it comes to the US or all over the world, like CPJ for that matter. But do we have a watchdog in Pakistan that actually dedicates itself to highlighting the plight of journalists?
We have many. Pakistan Press Foundation is an organization based in Karachi. They have been operating for, I think, more than 40 years now. And they've been doing the same thing. If you go to their website, you'll get everything, whatever data that you require, every little news story about a journalist getting beaten up or attacked or intimidated or harassed.
PPF might be monitoring, but the problem is when something serious happens and CPJ is actually monitoring it, they make an effort to reach out to me and inform me. I don't see PPF or other organizations doing the similar thing.
They might not be at par with international organizations,
but I'm talking about the limited pool. I'm talking about Pakistan. They should be able to put a lot.
I know what you're saying. Of course, there is an issue of capacity and communication and so on. And so, generally, we are, as a Pakistani organization, we are not at par as for instance, with an organization which enjoy much more resources and have much more manpower, and built in a certain environment where they're specifically doing their own job and so. So, but having said
like
so,
some organizations working in Namibia, or for that matter, South Sudan,
you-
they have more
you-
capacity
you
than
can say
Pakistan,
that.
right?
You can say that, but
It doesn't worry you.
let me just add one very important thing. It's just one last figure. I keep throwing in these figures. I'm sorry if I'm taking a lot of time, but according to our data, there are about 130 journalists who have been killed in the line of duty. And I'm talking about in the line of duty, not for their journalistic work. Out of those 130, only 76 were killed because of their journalistic work. All of others were killed in the field because of accidents, because they were caught in a suicide blast, because they didn't have a bulletproof vest on,
Or they
because
were pushed too
exactly
hard
they were,
by the
they were
organization.
pushed into a situation where they were not able to defend themselves.
Yeah.
And this is a substantially large sum of people who have died in accidents. And this again, sir, is not the responsibility of state per se, but more so the responsibility of the media houses.
Yeah, but it brings you back to the issue of social security, because we don't have any social security for journalists in this country either. And the problem is there are so many fake journalists as well, and fake publications, that whenever a prime minister, any prime minister travels abroad, there must be at least 10, 12 people from publications that have never been distributed, but they will also be accompanying them because they have the clout.
That's very unfortunate. by the way.
Unfortunate, and that's why you cannot ensure every journalist. It becomes quite hectic and problematic. But sir, this question that I asked him, what kind of physical changes that can be brought in that would ensure that you are safe and secure when you go out to report? And I'm not talking about laws, I'm not talking about even trainings, something else maybe.
There are certain threats and hazards which are associated with your job. Journalism itself is a job, is a profession which actually invites so many problems and so many threats to your life. So these hazards are associated with the job. I mean, in the line of duty, you face so many threats, so many problems. But at the same time, I think we need to be given protection. Protection to our life, and that is the duty of the state plus the institutions for which we are working. So something has to be done, some solution has to be found for it.
But do you have any concrete idea about that something?
I think
Because we always talk about abstracts.
okay, we have been discussing, there's been huge debate going on this issue. APNS, All Pakistan Newspaper Society, CPNE, and the other organization which is related to the electronic media, they have all sat together and they discussed to ensure the security and safety of the journalists. But unfortunately, no concrete solution has been found till this day. So we need to work, we need to keep thinking about it, we need to discuss the issue and finally come out with a viable solution so that the protection is given to the life of the journalists.
So given that this country is 70-year-old, and as you have already pointed out, the troubles that we have seen are not new. They have been
They are
lurking
not.
in the past.
But
as well.
I think there are so many issues, unsettled issues, unanswered questions in Pakistan. So we have not been able, unfortunately, we have not been able to find concrete, workable answers to these problems and to these questions. So I think this is another question, providing safety and security to working journalists, which has not been answered. So we need to find an answer to that. I believe that it is a collective responsibility of the state plus the institutions, the journalistic institutions. But at the same time, I think we need to change the attitude of all the players, main players, the political parties, the media houses, the religious groups, and all these people.
But there are groups that are within your control or influence.
There are certain
There are
which are not.
others which are not.
But I tell you that even in today's environment, if a big, landowner, land mafia, for instance, can be a threat to your life.
Yeah.
If you write a story to expose
Threat to-
his land grabbing activity.
Threat to your life? He
Yeah.
can be,
He can
certain
eliminate you.
cases, they can be threat to your state.
A and B, such people with money, huge money, these mafias, they can buy out the entire media house. So I think there are so many dimensions to this problem. So we
Right.
need to discuss all these things.
Yeah, but given that we are talking about micro issues, Azad Gishkori, and we are talking about journalists being protected, is it possible that there is some kind of standard test or some matrix to identify who is an actual journalist and who is fake? Because otherwise it becomes very easy for your gardener or my cook to become a journalist as well, or driver for that matter, and get all the benefits that are there. Remember, gardener of one politician has been running businesses, and he is now being held accountable. So these matters, after this consideration, should there be some kind of test or some kind of yardstick to measure who is a journalist and who is not?
Farooq, it's very much possible.
A database, perhaps?
Yes, it's very much possible by creating Pakistan Union of Journalists, PFUJ, and many other organizations just come up at a single platform and involving all media houses that tell us about their employees. They have their own card. It's very much possible, but it's possible in a way that when we engage all organizations and follow the laws and show self-accountability, it's very necessary for media, by the way, right now. And we should take Ahmed Noorani case as a test case. The government can even, I call it, form a permanent commission involving federations of journalists and many other.
Can you recall, off the top of your head, can you recall a single commission that has given you a concrete answer to any question in the Pakistan's history?
Never.
Any
Never, never, you're right. But listen, I'm talking about a permanent commission which might be working forever just for safety of journalists, just to resolve the issue of journalists, because a lot of journalists are in courts now. And other thing is very important in a way, they can engage PEMRA, all newspapers, organizations and other federations as well. And one most important on this platform, because this is the only channel world can listen us, that right now more than 46 Pakistani journalists are seeking asylum. This is a very worrying sign again. Abroad in different countries.
Right.
22 journalists in America only.
Right.
And can you imagine why they are seeking? Either I will not comment that either these cases are genuine or not, because they will
That's a very
decide.
important question.
That's an important question, and here comes the issue of lack of trust in the society. I don't think that you need to read Francis Fukuyama's Trust just to understand what is wrong here in the society itself. Every time there's an attack, somebody has to believe that it must be agencies of the country that are attacking them. And then this time, at least Ahmed Noorani's case, army that was repeatedly accused actually comes out and condemns it and then sends a bouquet to his hospital as well. The trouble, sir, at this moment is that if you start looking at these issues, they keep on multiplying.
But still the fingers are pointed at army, despite all what you have said.
Yeah,
Listen,
that
Farooq,
must
I
be
think,
because of
we-
agenda-driven something.
We must call spade a spade on this issue.
No, but
It's
there are other
very
questions.
unfortunate.
No, there are other questions. If you're talking about a permanent commission, do you mean to say that that commission will also take care of the issue of journalists not being paid their salaries for six months?
It should be taken because
Healthcare?
more than 4 journalists committed suicide during the last 10 years on this
Right.
very much issue.
Exactly.
Because they were not being paid by the organization they were serving for.
So whenever you talk about a construct like a commission, and then you add on so many weights, and you try to burden it with so many concerns, with vested interest actually totally against those issues, how do you expect to find any solution in the society?
Listen, there are multiple challenges. No doubt that this sort of case, Ahmed Noorani, violence and journalist issues. And the other thing is, do you know that are these media houses, right now 127 plus channels are being run in Pakistan, and PEMRA has capacity of only monitoring not more than 35. And
Wow.
does any media house submits its accountability its like audit reports annually
records, yeah.
to PEMRA
They
or
do.
any other organization?
I don't
no,
think so.
they never did. And that's why we should also introduce self-accountability. We
No,
must
how can
talk
we?
about
You and I are just journalists. We are not owners of anything.
and must
So
include
how would you? how
and
would-
listen, must include issue of press freedom, issue of freedom of expression. This is very important because
Yeah.
people are talking on social media. They were being picked by FIA and many other organizations, and nobody
well, we
tell to
can't be-
bother us that
we
what's
still
going
can't be
on
sure-
with them.
We can't be sure who picked them, but the problem is there is another kind of journalism in which we saw there was a marathon program that used to appear every day. Somebody
take example
with a
of-
religious
sorry to cut you, take
inclination
example of
kept
Zinat
on
Shehzadi
projecting
case.
that kept on repeating the so-called blasphemous, quotes from the handles, and then those people started disappearing. That is also very troubling trend in this country. And Asad, when I come to you, I'm not now going to talk about the rights, but responsibilities of journalists as well. And I'm talking about the content they provide to a user, an average user. The trouble is that so many people are accused, rightly or wrongly, of being too partisan in a country where the conception of a partisan media doesn't exist the way it exists in the US. So what should be done about that?
I think when you say accountability, I feel it should come from within. The onus here falls on the Pakistan Federal Union of Journalists and the RAUJs and the KUJs of this country. Unless they build in a mechanism of sorts to keep these kind of things in check, this is very difficult.
Who's going to convince them?
Yeah, that's a very. The good news is that
we
they've
we
been.
keep on talking about should have been done, could have been
No,
done.
that's what I'm.
The problem
no,
is
that's what I'm
that
coming
that
at.
is not being done.
No, that's what I'm coming at. The good news is that there is an indigenous effort within the unions to improve themselves, improve their structures. As far as I know, Rawalpindi Islamabad Union of Journalists have actually taken this step of what you were talking about, defining what a journalist or who a journalist is, and what kind of people can take up memberships. This may take a lot of time, but the process I'm very happy to say has been started.
With due respect, my first job, and I'm talking about some group that has repeatedly been mentioned today without taking names. My first job, the first salary that I was provided was on the pay slip of a pharmaceutical company. Not on the very same newspapers, receipts and all. This is the problem as well. I might be a journalist, but I might be an employee of a pharmaceutical company then.
Yeah, that's really, really unfortunate, which brings me to my second point.
A bigger group.
That if PEMRA, for instance, like my friend here said, is not receiving the audit reports on a yearly basis like they should, why aren't they making the fact public that they are not? Okay. Why aren't they making the fact public that the media houses are not complying to these standards or to these laws and so on? And if they are, for instance, not submitting their audit reports to the PEMRA, they are by law required to submit the audit reports to the SCCP. Why aren't SCCP, by the way, is also a public institution. Why aren't journalists so keen of media accountability going to SCCP for the audit reports just to check where exactly is the money coming from?
And look what they have done to SCCP
By the way,
as well.
we've put in an RTI request to both PEMRA and SCCP for the audit reports of all the major
And
television
you're not
channels.
talking about lawmakers' role at all. Because it is their responsibility to ask PEMRA what are they doing with these reports.
I'm talking about what the sort of in-house mechanisms, so to speak, which are coming from the community.
You realize
looks
something is blocked, and then things are not moving ahead. And maybe, just maybe, every person has settled for the status quo because they're tired of making effort or they think it benefits them. But somebody has to start moving it. And if we say should be done or can be done, that won't help. Something has to be done now, right? And somebody has to ask somebody, what are you doing right now?
I completely agree with you on
And
that.
lawmakers are the only ones who are accountable to you and I because we are voters.
I completely agree with you on that. There are various, just finishing up, there are various standing committees, by the way, on both the information technology and broadcast media. So perhaps this is their domain to be asking questions on these kind of issues.
Right. So you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to say that all the shareholders in this game of
Thrones?
information seeking and information dissemination and all that, they have to play their part. They have to play, they have to fulfill their responsibility.
And
Media houses.
And have to means that something is implied,
No,
but
no.
it is still not done.
It's not done. The media,
Something has to be done.
media houses have to put their orders, their house in order. For instance,
So,
there
but
are-
they don't.
no, but
And it
no, no,
suits them.
They have to be.
What are you going
No,
to
no,
do
no.
about
You
it?
know, these discussions have been going on for quite some time. There are 5,060 something daily newspapers in Pakistan.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the question of who is a journalist and who is not, who is a real journalist and who is a fake journalist, how can you make a distinction out of these 5,000 dailies of which you have never heard?
And thank
And-
God, still we haven't counted
Exactly.
the bloggers and the
bloggers
citizen
and-
journalists
and
at
the,
this
and the
moment.
weeklies and fortnightlies. So I mean, the media houses have to. I mean, the journalist organizations like Federation of Union of Journalists and other regional organizations, the APNS and the CPNE, they needs to join their hands together to scrutinize, to screen out those people who are bringing a bad name and who are not journalists by
Sir,
training.
would you
or for
respect
instance,
if in 70 years this hasn't worked?
but now
Why
is the
do you
time.
think it will now?
No, it's the time because the realization is dawning upon the people that this system cannot go on and on.
On
for
the
this.
on the owners, it is
No, no,
dawning on
all
the owners.
all the stakeholders, and of all these people, the
I don't know
basic
which
resp- the
stakeholders are you
basic
talking
respons-
about. All I see is stakeholders.
No, no.
They keep on using sticks
But,
on
but
us.
I think the media houses themselves, the people who are bringing out newspapers and running these channels, they have to discharge their responsibility.
Right. Sir, very quickly, I'm told that we have to conclude the program now. Your
I
conclusion.
just wanted to one last thing to the topic my friend started, that PEMRA chairman Absar Alam, the most professional journalist, we are lucky that he's heading it.
Okay.
He posted 39-second long video
Yeah.
about a current affair channel that he said.
And the way he was
"Can't-"
threatened,
He
his
threatened.
department was
Yes,
threatened.
I'm really surprised. Then who is controlling the media?
Yeah.
This is my question to you, please.
no,
Wind up your debate here.
No, but I'm not going to answer that. I
No,
think
but
that
the regulator himself is asking these things and expressing his helplessness.
regulator is not an army, sir. You have to
It's
remember
not
that.
army, but it has the
regardless,
powers.
I think there is much desired there to be done as well. Javed Siddique sir, thank you very much, sir, for your time. Zahid Kishkori, always a pleasure. Asad Beik, thank you very much for being here and educating us on media laws as well. Viewers, you have listened to to the participants of this show. You have listened to the things they had to say. Remember, it is getting very difficult to talk about media freedom, especially in a post-truth society. And I'm talking about a global society that has emerged, where a US president who is usually thought to be the protector of media rights ends up threatening of cancelling their declarations or something of that sort. It becomes very difficult. But in Pakistan, since we are trying to build democracy, we are trying to improve the quality of governance as well, it is important that people who are conscientious stand up and raise these issues. Because as we have discussed, 70 years, but it seems that nothing so far has been done. And if it is not done, remember, this is recipe for total and absolute disaster. Now information or misinformation can hurt more than bullets or bombs. It has to be remembered. This was today's program. Thank you very much for watching us. Take care.